And an example, I guess, with the distributed array versus just inline data.
Yeah.
How would you guys want to organize benchmarks? Because that would be a really useful, just like resource to have, a collection of models and inversion results from SimPEG, from other places. What do you think would it be a reasonable trajectory forward for something like that?
Or like where to put it at the end? It's a good question. I haven't thought about. I don't have an opinion right now, but yeah, we should show it somehow, or like at least archive it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, because like in a simple scenario, something we could do is honestly even just like start, put them up on Google or on Dropbox and just have like post a simple website and throw them up there. And then ideally, at least for some of the SimPEG ones, have scripts that produce those, or scripts or notebooks that produce those results that go alongside them.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? We won't be able to have them reproducible for the UBC codes because they're licensed, but at least have the output, I guess.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're actually working on an example now, like let's think through what at least makes sense for an N of 1 use cases, and we could try something out. And if it seems to be working, then maybe encourage other folks to jump on board.
Yeah, John, I guess we'll have to think of a semi-complicated, not too complicated example. It would be like a layer type of thing with a body at depth.
Yeah, I think I got something like that started, but yeah, I've only done it with SimPEG code. I just did it like a simple, like the one that I've been passing around to you. I've done that one with low conversion as well.
Okay.
So I have a comparison with that, like a benchmark with that one, but yeah, not the UBC, unfortunately. But it is pretty simple too. It's not. Maybe do it with the layer. I'll try and get on.
Yeah, put in a layer and because that's the thing they always see in inversions is those like long smiley faces of like resistor of conductor, and they're kind of like, it could be true, it's kind of geological. Yeah. There's like, no, not really. So we should have an example that does that,
Fair enough. Yeah, I can get that done.
For sure. Smiley faces. By the way, I pushed an update for the topo, the obs to topo load. When we drive because for Octree it wasn't really stable. There was some cases where you would throw it in the air, or like deep two cells down. So I pushed it's a pull request right now, but just make sure that next time you run DC, double check that you're really where you think you are in space.
That's a good point, because I kind of got away from Octree here in the last month or so. It just wasn't producing the same thing as Tensor. We were getting better models with the Tensor, so
that might be it now.
Yeah, that must be it. I did look into it a little bit, and I did notice it wasn't snapping perfectly, but it wasn't too bad. But it was a quick look. I didn't really investigate.
Yeah, because your potentials are going to be like way wrong, right? If you're 2 cells too deep or you're in the air, you're never going to be able to get those fields.
Yeah, that actually could explain a lot, for sure.
Yeah, it's running now nicely on my machine on real data. So cool. Yeah, look it up.
I'll have to pull that in and give it a shot.
I had added that function in that Dom used a long time ago because I had recognized the need for it at one point. I think I was doing local tree mesh DC inversions, and I made like a similar change, but it got lost at some point.
Lost in the mix, yeah.
Happens all too often.
Yeah.
At least the important function stayed in tree mesh.
Yeah, man, and that boundary. So Joe had written like a boundary cells, right? But also applies with an active. This is so much faster, and the code is so much cleaner than it was.
Yeah, right on.
It takes like a fraction of a second to do the same work as before. So that's a really good function.
Righteous.
So is anyone else joining us? We actually start a meeting officially.
Thibaut said he was going to be away for a couple of weeks, and everyone else is in Myanmar, or maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are in Myanmar, and it is probably what, like 4 in the morning there at this point. So
yeah, they're not getting on right now.
Did Sagi go to Myanmar?
No, Sagi's staying around. Yeah.
He's just doing the work.
Yeah. Joe, do you want to kick us off then? You've been working hard.
Sure. So there's a few things that I meant to talk about at some point, and I just kind of want to make sure that things that we have brought up at some point we keep remembering that we need to talk about them at least, even if it's some sort of like a unofficial, like, oh, future discussions type of thing, just keep an idea of it. Cause it's like, okay, we bring up some ideas during the week and then, okay, well, we meant to talk about this something last week and it never happened. And then anyway, so just kind of something to think about as far as future work. So let's see, this week I've got the SimPEG simulation is on CondaForge now. In order to install it, you actually essentially you need to add both the CondaForge label beta channel and the CondaForge channel, and they have to be added in like that certain priority. So it grabs the SimPEG from the beta label first, and then it grabs everything else it needs from the CondaForge channels. So I'm pretty sure that was most of the issues with them installing it in Myanmar. It seems that it is working now with that command over there. See, I got GeoAnna. I've went through and kind of reduced some of the dependencies on that because I started looking at the dependency trees of SimPEG, and it wasn't too bad until you got to GeoAnna, and because GeoAnna like had a dependency on IPy widgets, and IPy widgets was like huge. Like the dependency graph of that was like really large. So I went back and like, okay, well, it's actually not using it at all. So I just removed it. It'll probably be a better idea. I think what we talked about before with Lindsay is that we'll make it a soft. If we add like the widgets back in, it'll be a soft dependency to where somebody wanted to use it, they would then need to install it, but it's not needed to run GeoAnna.
What's your thought? Is matplotlib currently a dependency of GeoAnna?
Yes. So I would probably assume we should probably do something similar with all those kind of like plotting and things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right now, I mean, I'm pretty sure matplotlib and Jupyter are both dependencies of, I think they're in SimPEG. I don't know if it's in SimPEG or not. I don't quite remember at this point.
At least, but I don't think matplotlib is a dependency in Discretize. It very well
right.
Right now.
I know it definitely got removed from Discretize. So looks like matplotlib. Yep, matplotlib's on there. Let's see what else. Oh, I put up a little issue on GeoAnna that I realized as we were going through it. So right now, SimPEG depends on GeoAnna, and the testing on GeoAnna depends on SimPEG. So we should definitely clean up those tests on GeoAnna. That's where they're not necessarily reliant on that.
Yeah, that's a good call.
What else? Okay, so we're not going to probably be able to discuss it that much today, but we need to bring up in a future meeting the factor 1/2 in terms of ID, probably when more people are present and everyone's back from Myanmar, so we can have a nice full discussion on that.
No more discussion. We do it, man.
In absentia, they
just push the button.
Yeah, I think Doug and Thibaut have pretty strong opinions on this. My only opinion is that I really don't like what is currently being done, where we're displaying something different to the user than what is actually going on in the code. Mm-hmm. That I'm not okay with, but whether or not there's a half in front,
it does, like, yeah.
So as long as, and I mean, I think if it's causing confusion, like displaying something about the directive and explaining why it's stopping at a half, like that's something that we can overcome. But yeah, no, thanks, Joe.
So, and then the other part that I've noticed as we're going through it is So there's a lot of references in the code base to standard deviation, right? And most of the time, it's being set, the number you give it is not a standard deviation. Does that make sense? Every time it's being used, it's mostly being used as like, okay, it's a percent of this. It's something times the value. And that's not standard deviation.
Fair enough.
Right? That's something else. It's like some coefficient of variation or something. But it's not a standard deviation. And I mean, the closest thing in the code base that right now that comes to like what we would actually call a standard deviation is what is being referred to as like uncertainties.
Right.
Or the noise floor, you could just set a value to be noise floor, and that would be your standard deviation. Like the true, if you were going to look at a Gaussian distribution, the number that you would give noise floor, let's say, would be the standard deviation of that Gaussian distribution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, man. I agree.
So my point is that what we say now is standard deviation. We're not actually using it as a standard deviation, and it's not actually a standard deviation.
What about something like, I mean, this, I hesitate, but we can think through this, calling it, because what we're using is basically a percent error.
Yes, yeah.
But it's not actually in units of percent right now.
Right, it's a multiplier or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like we should probably come up with a better name for it. And I think the only reason, I was talking to Thibaut about this, and he like completely understands where I'm coming from. But he's like, I feel like the only reason it was ever referred to as standard deviation is from legacy stuff, right? In which case, if it's the wrong thing, we should be more precise about it and correct that. At least that's my opinions on this whole topic here that I was hoping to bring up at some point.
Good point.
Dom or John, do you guys have other ideas of what we would call that? Percent error to me is sort of the closest thing.
That technically would be the closest for sure. But is that, I guess that would be just this, it would have to be set as a standard way of inputting or assigning errors, I guess it would be in a sense.
Well, because right now you can set both what we're calling standard deviation, but let's just swap that name for percent error for now, hypothetically. So we've got percent error, then we have a noise floor. You can set both of those. You can either, like in a problem, you can set both, or you can set just either one.
Yeah.
And then from those two input values or input vectors, we will then construct like an uncertainty vector, which is basically a standard deviation.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now the standard deviation is just a plain percent.
It's just a plain percent.
Yeah. Well, you can input a vector too if you want to, but it's not a percent. Like
it gets multiplied by the absolute value of the data set.
Yeah, which is the percent. Why don't we just call noise percent, because we have a noise floor and then I have a noise percent.
So do you want to hard code a factor of 100 into it then, or just know that it has to be 0.001 is 1%?
I see what you mean. Ooh, okay.
Like that's what we're trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't have an opinion. I think because right now we're entering the users are used to be as a decimal, all right, not as a percent divided by 100. So
I kind of like the decimal, keeping it that way, but it's not very clear, I would assume, to say a new user.
Is it like signal to noise ratio almost, or noise to signal ratio?
Not quite. What does Doug call it in their tutorial? I'm just pulling up the Bergen Lee tutorial to see what they called it.
So the closest thing I can think of to like something that's actually what it's actually called, I think, is like this coefficient of variation. But it's not really intuitive to most people what that actually means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard. I'd almost like variation, but it's again, it's not, that's misleading. It's because it's a coefficient of a variation. But, that's,
Why don't we just do percent floor and then do the, if we see that it's everything is above, like we're never going to have a percent floor that is above 1, right? And we just divide it by 100 or something. Like we throw a warning if people use something that's bigger than 1.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess though, if we call it a percent, I would then expect that it always be between 1 and 100. Because that is like what a percent is.
Yeah. Well, which is fine. People use whatever they want, and we do it. We do it for them.
Yeah, the hard code might be the best way going forward. Just intuitively, when people see percent, they're going to put in whole number. I would assume.
It's up to you guys.
Joe, maybe the thing to do is, do we want to put this in like a discourse post or an issue, and like we can time box this.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to like have this be as in depth of a conversation as the factor of a half, because that one people are very opinionated around. This one,
this one is just like we should do it right, but let's decide the right way.
Yeah. I mean, so if we can do that, because then I think we might get a few other people chiming in, and if next week we have nothing better than percent, then let's go with percent.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll make an issue and like talk about it more there. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Joe. Yes.
Sure.
To make a decision in the future.
There's something else we should also look into. Is that right now, are we going to work on the print statements of the inversion, or like the printed stuff?
That is something we should.
Because one thing that has been there for a long time, it's super annoying, is that the directives are triggered before the print is done, so that the beta is always lagging. Is always ahead of. So when we see, like, say, iteration 0 or iteration 1 with a beta, it's actually the beta that's going to be used at the next iteration. It's not the beta used during that iteration, which is kind of annoying. So we should print before we launch all the directives, because then we're changing all the, like the objective function, betas, all that stuff is changed like for the next round. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And with that, I mean, while we're at it, it would be nice to basically allow, and I don't know entirely how we want to do this, but allow basically the user, when we create the inversion, to input like a string of what they actually want printed, or a list of what they actually want printed, because in some cases it's actually really helpful to see like phi D, phi M,
Break
and
it up, yeah.
all the pieces of phi M. But, not every user wants to see that. So like having a couple, like just having a mechanism to have a little bit of flexibility on that might be nice.
Yeah, actually the print could be a directive on its own, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we make sure that the print statement is always at the beginning of the list. So then you print and then you trigger the rest.
Could it be attached to the like data misfit function, the model objectives? Somehow, like turn print on for this model objective, or turn it off for this one, or.
I guess it depends how you're going to do it. Yeah.
I sort of hesitate there, because that sort of means then that we presume that the like data misfit has to know in some senses about like
inversion.
Directives and things like that, and something about the inversion, whereas ideally the directives are the ones that know about everything, and can request values and things like that from any piece of the inversion.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, so in a sense, like what we could, and we can play around with like how the setup of that should look like, but you could even imagine inputting just like a list of objects that we're going to be printing some value of. So like that print directive could get, like we input phi-d, phi-m, and then the smallness terms to construct that. That might be a bit clunky.
Yeah, and it will, if you do this, you're probably going to require the object to evaluate itself while the information already exists at the inverse problem level, right? That's what it's using right now, or the optimization, or whoever holds those values. I kind of like the idea to just be a directive, a print directive, and you just turn it off if you don't want to see any prints.
That'd be kind of nice.
And then we have full flexibility to turn switches on and off. What do we want to see, and that would be my 2 cents.
Actually, regarding that, so that function for that directive, that save iteration info, if that is not first, is the beta and everything being printed correctly?
Yeah, it should be, because it's. I guess it depends where your beta cooling happens.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, that's the order. That's the order of that directive list.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at that and make sure I'm in the right spot then.
Yeah, because as soon as we touch it, then it's changed.
That's when we should take another a look at, because I think we've got both like the save the output and save output dictionary, and like I don't think we need both, but that can wait. I think we should get the simulation stuff in, and then working on serializing objects. I think we're getting there, at least with the simulation side of things, but not necessarily everywhere in the code base. Like I tried serializing a DC survey the other day, and it didn't work, or the other week, and maybe it does now. And that said, I don't think we need to have that working to merge the simulation branch in, but it is something that we should get working, because then what would be nice is, like, if you run a forward simulation, you should at the end of that just be able to serialize a data object and then load that up into another notebook and like run an inversion from there, and not have to sort of go through some intermediary like ASCII file or something like that.
Yeah, sure. No more files.
I was looking at it before, but how does the deserialization pick up what class it is with properties?
We can walk through that. The class name is serialized with the object.
Right. So do you have to like do another step after?
So I still deserialize, like you can pass deserialize. I'm just gonna try and pull up a notebook where I actually do this.
Because like when you pickle something, right, it just knows how to unpickle into the right object and everything.
Yeah, so in this case, you still should load it up like by deserializing, by calling a deserialize method on the correct object. So if I have serialized like a fields FDEM 3D object, I should call deserialize on that.
Yeah.
So you still sort of need to know which object you're working with. What we could do, and this wouldn't be too hard to do, actually, and I think this is what I even do in the mesh.save and mesh.load, is first just look at what the class is, and then like be smart enough to do the deserialization for you. So I think actually discretize is the place to look. Let me see if I can pull that up. Let's see, where did we put that?
Is that in base?
It's in Mesh.io.
Sure.
Yeah, so here, I can just share my screen real quick if that's helpful. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, actually, so here we deserialize on the base mesh, and it's smart enough to look at the class in the serialized mesh and form it from there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we can play around with.
Super. All right.
And then it looks like there's been a few more people chiming in on Discourse, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I replied to the Aurora guy there, but he hasn't gotten back to me about the tipper stuff. Unless I haven't seen it in a while.
I see. Someone did follow up with them, eh?
With
good.
Aurora, yeah.
Yeah.
I asked them. I just told them. Yeah, I can give them a hand. We just need to get their data into an object, into a SimPEG object. But never got back to me after that. So.
Okay, it's probably working.
Yeah. I'm kind of working on tipper stuff anyways right now. So hopefully, while I'm on it, they'll come back and I can.
What's the status again? I think I ask you about every time, but we're not paralyzed for MT, are we? Yep.
Not quite yet. I thought I did push my stuff on the simulation branch, but I guess I kept it back. I do have a bit of it parallelized, but then I went back and tested it here the other week, and yeah, it didn't seem as good as when I was testing it before. So I must have done something.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working on all that right now. I'm kind of put DC to the side for a bit. And it'll be mostly MT right now.
All right, I'll catch up. I'll catch up with you. I'll push DC. Once you're happy, then I'll go to MT.
Sounds good, yeah.
Cool. Then I guess one other thing to just kind of put on the radar is with respect to docs. It would be great if we could actually get everything onto GitHub pages rather than Google, or like Google and read the docs, because Discretize is now on GitHub pages. Yeah, so something just to kind of keep on the radar, but we don't necessarily need to act on that.
That's funny because I'm working on docs for a different project. Do you think GitHub pages is better than read the docs long term?
I mean, if it's working on read the docs, that's great. But read the docs doesn't scale to very large projects. Like if you get enough examples that are big enough, it can be hard to get going on there. Like Discretize didn't work because it was a pain in the neck to try and install the C++ code on read the docs. But GeoAnna is still on read the docs, and that's fine.
Okay.
So.
And it handles RSTs too?
Yeah.
Nice. I'll look into it.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
Well, I think actually for GitHub pages, you should build the site. Let me see what we actually have. Bain set this up for us for Discretize. Yeah, so SimPEG. Oh, wait. or it might even be discretized. Let's see. Yeah, so it's the discretized docs repo is how Bain has set that up. So I will just drop that link into.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, thanks. Perfect.
Cool. Okay. Anything else you guys want to go over, or things that you want to chat through? Yeah.
No, I created those PRs, Joe. So whenever you want to bring them in, review them, and I'm happy otherwise.
Joe, anything else from your end?
No, I'm good.
John?
Just getting back into the MT stuff here, so I'll be mostly on that, but nothing new right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't have too much else. I'm sort of getting up and running actually on the UXO problem. So I've been in touch with some of the folks at Black Tusk, so playing around with some of their code, which has been fun. But nothing too much. It's basically just preliminary, like, can I run a script? And yes, I can, which is good. So
We heard about your machine learning project. John is on it, right? John, tell her what you told us before she got here.
Oh yeah, I'm before I kind of had to put a bunch of the SimPEG stuff to the side there. I'm working on a little bit of an AI that goes through time series because our data volume is just so large, and it identifies EM coupling, timing issues, disconnected nodes. I'm about 83% accuracy with it.
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. It was really easy to implement too with TensorFlow and Keras. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
good stuff.
Oh.
So hopefully I can get it up to the 90, and then I'll fully import it.
That's awesome. Well, if you wanted to like chat through that 1 week, that would be awesome to see.
Nice. Actually, I've been piling up a few things, and I was going to say I can give a little bit of a presentation or something because I've got that, and what else? Oh yeah, the Durbin Watson stuff. I'd really like to just kind of go through it with everybody just to see if it's worth it, if it looks right, or just to see if it's doing things.
Yeah, that would be super cool.
Give me a few weeks. I should have some more stuff.
For sure.
The pretty much the machine learning, the hardest part is just making the learning data set. Like I went through like 600 time series in the last few weeks, and I need a break.
Oh yeah, because you need to create your own training, right?
Yeah, there's no time series data sets out there like
Yeah.
so it's one by one, putting it together.
All right, yeah, definitely. If you can give us a little tutorial, man, I would definitely appreciate it.
For sure. Yeah. Give me a few weeks and I should be good.
Perfect.
That'd be great, Joe.
All right, I gotta go.
See you guys.
See you next week.
Bye, guys.